I want to read a passage from your mega bestseller, The Defining Decade. Your 20s matter. 80% of life's most defining moments take place by the age of 35. Your earning power is decided in your first 10 years of work. More than half of us are married or dating or living with our future partner by the age of 30. Your brain and your personality change more during your 20s than at any time before or after. Your social network is about as big as it is ever going to get. Your defining decade coincides with your peak childbearing years. Meanwhile, your 20s are the most uncertain years you will ever know. Why do you think so many people are freaked out by those statistics and they don't want to talk about it? Because that's not your opinion. Those are the facts.
Right. Those are the facts. Definitely not my opinion. I think it comes from a couple of different places. Culturally, we idealize youth. So we say, oh, your 20s, these are going to be the best years of your life. Empirically not true. We'll talk more about that. We say, oh, your 20s, these are going to be the most carefree years of your life. Empirically not true. We'll talk more about that. The truth is your 20s are the most defining decade of adulthood, and also in many ways the most difficult decade in adulthood. The reason for that is it's a time of a lot of firsts and a lot of worsts. You have your first and worst job, your first and worst relationships, your first and worst breakups. It's a very, very tricky time. And I think older adults often look at 20-somethings and they think, oh, they don't have partners or houses or mortgages or kids. What do they have to feel so stressed out about? But I think what they don't realize is that it's stressful not to have those things, and even more importantly, not to know if you ever will.
Oh my gosh, as a parent, you just made me feel sad.
Aw, it's hard. It's hard to be a 20-something. Yeah.
Well, because I have been guilty of saying, well, you don't have kids. You know what? You can figure it out. You can try anything. The world's your oyster. Go do what you want. Like, what are y'all worked up about? Like, yeah, da, 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 da. But I'd never really stopped to think about the fear that you might not have those things that you wanted, or you might not be able to figure it out.
Right. I've had so many clients and students over the years say, if I knew I was going to have it all eventually, I could get through this time. I don't need it now, but if I knew I was going to have it, I could get through this time so much easier. And of course, we can't see into the future. We just have to create the future as best as we can.
You've also said that the reason why it's so important to recognize that your 20s are your defining decade is because you've spent countless hours with 30 and 40 somethings who are devastated by the price they're paying for the lack of direction, the lack of urgency, to use one of your words, in their 20s. So what do you want to say to someone who is in their 20s and who's saying, well, I'll just figure this out later. I don't figure this out right now. I got plenty of time.
I think the first thing I would actually not say, it would be a question I would ask, what are they waiting for? That I think 20-somethings feel like they have time to figure it out without maybe fully understanding it takes time to figure it out. Ooh. So the sooner you start that process, the better. If you try to start figuring everything out in your 30s, you're probably going to be pretty crunched for time. You may not get everything you want. I don't want that to happen, which is why in the Defining Decade, I don't say you have to have it all figured out by 30. I say, please start figuring it out by 30.
I love that distinction. The distinction of, I have time to figure it out versus it takes time to figure it out. And so when you're talking to somebody in their 20s, how do you counsel somebody who is freaking out about the fact that they don't have it all figured out? And now I start to feel anxious that I don't have it figured out. Now I'm paralyzed by that. And so when somebody feels paralyzed, they don't do anything, which means they're not figuring it out. So how do you counsel somebody to flip from that state of kind of paralysis to it takes time to figure it out? And my point is, you need to start getting serious about figuring it out.
Well, we start with something. I think one thing where people go wrong with 20-somethings is that I think they think reassurance and saying, it's fine, you've got all the time in the world, you'll figure it out. reassurance doesn't actually make people feel better, or it makes them feel better for about an hour or a day, and then they come back for more. We call clients or 20-somethings like this, people like this, reassurance junkies.
Reassurance
Yeah,
junkies?
they're anxious. They get a little hit of reassurance. They feel better for a minute, but then they have to come back for more because reassurance it's empty. Instead of saying, oh, it's fine, it doesn't matter, you'll be fine, I say, hey, I'm taking your concerns seriously. So what are we going to do? What are you going to do? Where can you start? Let's start now. That actually makes people feel better than telling them they'll be fine. Is saying, well, let's make sure you're fine. Let's do something about it.